"You need a wife, and I need a dad," whispered the little girl to the CEO sitting alone in his limousine. It was a quiet Sunday morning on a side street in a cozy neighborhood where local farmers set up makeshift stalls with folding tables, colorful umbrellas, and handwritten signs. The scent of grilled corn, fresh herbs, and cinnamon wafted through the breeze. Lauren, 28 years old, with soft blonde hair tied in a loose bun, stood behind her humble booth, arranging trays of golden, flaky homemade pastries, warm and fresh from the oven that very morning. Her 3-year-old daughter, Mia, sat nearby on a faded picnic blanket with a stuffed bunny and a broken crayon. Her stall was modest, a folding table, a chipped cooler full of juices, and a small hand-painted sign that read, "Mom's Oven, baked with heart." Lauren wore a faded apron and worn sneakers, but her tired yet kind smile greeted every passerby with warmth. Across the street, a sleek black limousine pulled up and parked silently. Its polished surface gleamed like it didn't belong there, drawing immediate stares. Lauren barely glanced at it. She was too busy wrapping a cinnamon roll for an elderly homeless woman who had approached with hesitant eyes. "No need to pay," Lauren said, gently placing the treat in the woman's hands. "It's a good day for something warm." Not far away, Mia had wandered over to the limousine, hopping between chalk-drawn hopscotch squares. As she picked up her stuffed bunny from the sidewalk, she heard a man's voice through the slightly open window of the limousine, low and a bit tense, as if he was on the phone. "Mom, I really don't need an arranged marriage. I'll find a wife on my own, but not the kind who just shows up for galas and photos. I need someone who really feels like family." Mia tilted her head, clutched her bunny tighter, then without hesitation, stepped forward, stood on tiptoes, and gently knocked on the tinted window with her tiny knuckles. She spoke softly, almost like a secret. "You need a wife, and I need a dad." The window rolled down halfway. Inside, Ethan Blackwood, 34 years old, impeccably dressed in a dark suit, froze mid-sentence. His phone was still pressed to his ear, but he wasn't listening anymore. His eyes landed on the bright-eyed girl with a messy ponytail and a crooked bow slipping off her shoulder. Slowly, he looked beyond her, across the sidewalk to where Lauren was crouched, placing a cup of tea next to the elderly woman, her hand lightly touching the woman's shoulder in comfort. Ethan ended his call without a word. He stared at Mia for a long moment, then back at her mother. The girl looked at him with wide, unblinking eyes. She wasn't smiling, just stating a truth she'd quietly believed for some time. All the other kids at daycare talked about their dads. Mia didn't have one, but here was a man who seemed to have everything except what he'd just said he needed. "I'm Mia," she added matter-of-factly, "and my mom makes the best cookies in the world." Ethan blinked, as if waking from a trance. Then, slowly, he opened the door and stepped out of the limousine, adjusting his cufflinks without haste. His shoes hit the pavement with a quiet firmness that made people notice. Mia's gaze never wavered. It was the first time in years that Ethan Blackwood had stopped for something outside his meticulously scheduled world. And it wasn't a shareholder, a headline, or a business deal that caught his attention. It was a phrase, a whisper from a girl who offered no agenda, just honesty. Ethan knelt slightly to meet Mia's eyes. "Your mom is over there?" he asked softly. Mia nodded and pointed. "Right there. Her name's Lauren, and she's really pretty too." Ethan looked again, this time longer. Lauren turned her head just then and caught his gaze, uncertain, confused, tired. Her hands were dusted with flour, her eyes wary. But Ethan smiled for the first time that day, not to charm, not for effect, simply because he couldn't help it. And for the first time in a long while, Ethan Blackwood did something without thinking of the consequences. He stayed. Lauren wiped her hands on her apron as Ethan approached. The man who'd stepped out of the limousine now stood before her modest stall, his tailored suit contrasting sharply with the peeling paint and plastic tablecloth. He smiled politely. "You must be Lauren." She straightened instinctively. "And I'm Ethan Blackwood." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Mia shouldn't bother strangers. I'm sorry." "It wasn't a bother," he said. He glanced down where Mia was now scribbling on the sidewalk. "In fact, she said something that made me rethink a few things." Lauren crossed her arms. "What kind of things?" Ethan met her eyes directly. "I have a family event tomorrow, my grandmother's birthday. It's formal, traditional, and I'm expected to bring a date." Lauren blinked. I realize this is unorthodox, but I'd like to offer a temporary arrangement, just for the day. He continued calmly. Pretend to be my girlfriend. Accompany me to the event. That's all. She stared at him. You're joking. I'm not. You want me, she gestured between them, to play your girlfriend at a fancy party. He nodded once. Lauren let out a half sigh, half snort. Do I look like someone who dresses up for mansion parties? I think you look like someone who can handle a room full of pretentious people and someone my grandmother would like. His voice was firmer now. I don't do things like this. I'm not for sale. I have a daughter and dignity. I'm not questioning either. Lauren slid a tray onto a shelf. Look, Mr. Blackwood, I don't care how much money you have. Whatever game you're playing, leave me out of it. Ethan didn't flinch. He simply reached into his pocket, pulled out an elegant business card, and placed it carefully beside the muffin basket. If you change your mind, my number's on the back. His voice stayed calm. Have a good day. He gave a small nod to Mia, then turned and left. That night, Lauren stared at the ceiling above her narrow bed, listening to Mia's echoing cough in their tiny studio apartment. The landlord had stopped by earlier, knocking impatiently on the doorframe, reminding her the rent was overdue. The fridge held little more than a jar of mustard, 2 eggs, and a half-empty carton of milk. The heater was finicky, and autumn nights were growing colder. She rose quietly, pulled a blanket higher over Mia's small sleeping form. Then she sat on the edge of the bed, staring at Ethan's card on the nightstand. Her fingers hovered over it for a long time. By morning, she'd made her decision. She dialed his number. He answered on the first ring. It's Lauren. A pause. I'll do it just once, just for tomorrow. He sounded surprised. All right, I'll send someone with a dress. No, she interrupted. I'll wear what I have. I'm not here to pretend to be someone else. Another pause. Understood. And I'll bring Mia. There was silence. Then Ethan said softly, Of course. I'm not doing this for your money, Lauren added. I'm doing it because I have a daughter, and she needs food, shelter, and medicine if she gets worse. You don't owe me an explanation. Maybe not, but I need to say it for myself. Ethan's tone softened. Pickup is at 11, and thank you, Lauren. She hung up. Later, as she braided Mia's hair, Lauren looked at herself in the cracked mirror above the sink. Her eyes were tired, her blouse a bit faded, but there was something firmer there. This wasn't a leap into luxury, not a fairy tale, it was a mother's choice, and whatever tomorrow brought, she'd face it on her own terms. The next afternoon, the limousine pulled up smoothly in front of the grand iron gates of the Blackwood estate. The mansion stood tall and elegant, its sprawling lawn already buzzed with well-dressed guests sipping champagne and murmuring in measured tones. As the driver stepped out, Ethan adjusted his tie and opened the door. Lauren emerged first, holding Mia's small hand. Her daughter wore a simple white dress with a bow fluttering in the breeze. Lauren's dress was older, modest, with soft folds and no frills, but on her, it looked quietly dignified. She stood out not for glamour, but for how grounded she seemed amid all the excess. As they approached the gathering, a hush seemed to spread through the crowd. Who is she? Ethan's date. Wait, there's a kid. Is that his? No way. Ethan Blackwood brought a single mum to Eleanor Blackwood's birthday. Lauren felt the weight of stares following her like heat on her back. Some whispered behind champagne flutes. Their gazes lingered too long. Some smirked. Others barely hid their skepticism. Mia squeezed Lauren's hand tightly, drawing closer instinctively. They weren't welcome. Ethan noticed the tension immediately. He placed a firm hand on the small of Lauren's back. Just a light touch, but it silenced some murmurs. It said without words, "She's with me." Still, the tension didn't fade. Ethan's mother, Vivian Blackwood, was the first to approach, tall, regal, dressed in a navy suit and pearls. She stopped a few steps in front of them, her expression unreadable. Her eyes flicked quickly between Lauren and Mia. "You and the child are Ethan's girlfriend and daughter." Lauren squared her shoulders, her voice steady. "I'm a friend accompanying him today. This is my daughter, Mia." "I see." Vivian's nod was brief. Her eyes, however, weren't as polite. She turned slightly to Ethan and asked quietly, "Are you serious about her? What makes her special?" Ethan didn't answer. He simply rested his hand on Lauren's back again, firm, this time not subtle. The party continued around them, but Lauren could still feel the stares. She stayed on the edge of the gathering as guests mingled under twinkling lights and classical music. The buffet table gleamed with gold-rimmed plates. Laughter echoed from the far end of the lawn. She'd never felt so out of place. Suddenly, a sharp cry pierced the air. A boy, maybe 5 years old, collapsed on the grass, clutching his throat. His mother screamed, dropping her drink. Several guests gasped and stepped back. A waiter stumbled, spilling wine on the white tablecloth. The boy had been eating grapes. Lauren moved instantly. She set her drink on the nearest table, rushed to the boy, and dropped to her knees. Calmly and precisely, she positioned him forward and began a modified Heimlich maneuver, one arm supporting his chest, the other delivering firm, calculated thrusts. 1, 2, 3, and then a soft pop. As the grape dislodged, the boy coughed violently, then whimpered alive, breathing. His mother dropped beside him, sobbing. "Oh my God, thank you. Are you a doctor?" Lauren shook her head gently, breathless. "No, just a mum." Before she could say more, Mia ran over, eyes wide but proud. "My mummy's a superhero," she announced in a clear voice. "She knows everything." Laughter broke out around them, not cruel this time, but warm. Several guests clapped softly. Even Vivian's stern expression cracked into something almost thoughtful. Lauren brushed Mia's hair back gently, her voice low. "I'm not a superhero, but I'm a single mum. There's no one else to protect her, so I learned what I could." Vivian turned to the older woman beside her and murmured. She stayed calm, and the child so well-mannered. The woman nodded. "She's doing something right." Ethan said nothing, but his eyes never left Lauren once. A few minutes later, the crowd shifted as Eleanor Blackwood, Ethan's grandmother, emerged slowly from the mansion. She walked with a cane but held her chin high, dressed in silver silk. Her eyes scanned the lawn and paused when she saw Lauren, Mia, and the boy. Someone whispered the story in her ear. She approached. "Miss," Eleanor said softly. Lauren turned. "I don't enjoy these things much anymore," the old woman said in a clear but kind voice. "But if you sit with me, I think I might." Lauren smiled, surprised. "I'd be honored." Mia perched on the bench beside Eleanor, already chattering about grapes and heroes, and her mom's ninja moves. The three sat together under a tree as the sun began to set, painting the lawn gold. From a distance, Ethan watched them, and for the first time since the limo ride, he exhaled slowly and deeply. Lauren was no longer just someone he'd invited for a night, she was someone he didn't want to let go. The morning after the party, Ethan sat with an untouched cup of coffee in hand, staring out at the garden from his grandmother's window. The previous night's conversation lingered in his mind, the warmth in Lauren's smile, the firmness in her voice, and the way Mia had curled up in her lap, like she belonged there. Grandmother Eleanor wheeled into the room, her eyes sharp despite her gentle tone. "Invite them back," she said without preamble. Ethan turned to her, surprised. "You mean Lauren and Mia?" She nodded. The little one's laughter made this old place feel alive again. "And I want to hear more about those sweet potato and sesame treats Lauren mentioned. Street food stories warm the soul more than caviar ever could." Ethan smiled faintly. "She might say no." "Then ask nicely," Eleanor replied. "And this time, no contracts, just you." So later that day, Ethan returned to Lauren's stall. She noticed him the moment he approached, but didn't stop tying a ribbon around a box of pastries. "Let me guess," she said amusedly. "Your grandmother wants more sugar. She wants your company," Ethan replied honestly. "Both of yours?" Lauren hesitated. Ethan softened his tone. "No expectations, just an afternoon." Mia told her about the superhero rescue. "I think you're already family in Eleanor's eyes." Lauren tilted her head, then smirked. "Fine, but only if you pay me in tea and 2 hours of peace." "Deal," Ethan said, hand on heart. That visit turned into another, then another. Ethan started showing up at Lauren's stall on Saturdays, not in a suit, but in jeans with sleeves rolled up, ready to haul boxes and sample cookies. Mia insisted he try them. In the afternoons, he sometimes joined them for dinner, soup in mismatched bowls, candlelight when the power flickered, laughter coming more easily than expected. Mia sat between them, babbling about preschool, fairies, and how she wanted a puppy someday. One afternoon in particular, Lauren caught a quiet moment that stuck with her. Ethan was at the kitchen table with Mia's stuffed bunny in his lap. One ear had torn slightly again. Without a word, he'd found a needle and the thread she kept in a jar and started sewing it carefully. The man who signed multi-million-dollar deals, now mending a toy with hands that trembled more than he let on. Lauren lingered in the doorway, unseen, a lump in her throat. That night, as she tucked Mia in, the girl whispered, "Mommy, I think Mr. Ethan looks at you like in the cartoons." Lauren blinked. "What do you mean?" "You know, like when the prince sees the princess and his eyes sparkle." Lauren laughed softly, brushing Mia's hair back. "Have you been watching too many fairy tales?" Mia grinned. "But he does even when you don't see." Lauren said nothing, but later, as she washed dishes, she caught her own reflection in the window and wondered for a moment if her eyes were starting to look the same way. There were no grand confessions, no kisses under the stars, but feelings began settling into places. Neither was prepared for like warm water seeping through cracks in two lives once too solid. Ethan started noticing things he'd never paid attention to before. The way Lauren hummed while kneading dough, how she always gave extra cookies to kids who seemed to need them. The way she knelt to Mia's level, never above her, and Lauren noticed too. The way Ethan listened, really listened. The way he held doors for strangers. The way he always looked at Mia like she was a gift. Whatever it was, it no longer felt like a transaction. It was something else forming between shared dinners and small silences, between Mia's giggles and the way Ethan's hand sometimes brushed Lauren's by accident, and neither pulled away. Nobody said it out loud, but it was there, and that unspoken truth made everything feel quietly dangerous and beautifully real. It started with a headline on a gossip site known for scandal and half-truths. It published a story that spread like wildfire. Billionaire CEO hires single mom to fake romance at family event. Below were photos, Lauren holding Mia in her arms at the elegant party, Ethan with his hand gently on the small of her back. Another shot of them smiling as Mia clung to his leg. Moments once felt real, now twisted into something cruel. The comments were brutal. Gold digger alert. Single moms will do anything for a sugar daddy. That's really his kid? She looks just like him. Classic PR stunt. Wants to seem humble. Gross. By noon, the story was trending. Lauren was at her stall when it happened. A man she'd never seen before approached, pulled out his phone, showed her the article, and laughed in her face. "Oh, so you're the one who rented herself out. Classy." Before she could respond, another voice chimed in. Then another, words like fake, cheap, and disgrace, slicing the air like knives. Then someone splashed water right over her display. The tablecloth soaked, cookies ruined, labels smeared illegible. And in the middle of it all, Mia cried. Lauren scooped her daughter into her arms, heart pounding. She held her tight, whispering, "It's okay, it's okay." Though it wasn't. They fled. Back in their apartment, Lauren bolted the door, drew the curtains, and sat on the floor with Mia in her lap. The room was dim. The fridge's hum was the only sound. Mia's tiny fingers clutched her shirt. "They're mad at us, Mommy," she whispered. Lauren didn't answer. She just cried. Silent, bitter tears from a place deeper than shame. It was grief for something that had felt real, something she'd foolishly started to believe in. She'd let herself dream of safety, belonging, a family with Ethan. She thought of the nights they'd shared dinners, the way he smiled when Mia tugged his sleeve, the warmth in his eyes seeing them together. But none of it mattered to the world. She was just an employee, a scandal, a joke. Lauren reached for her phone, hand shaking. She opened their text thread. His last message had been thanks for dinner. The next would be very different. She typed, "I saw what they're saying. Maybe they're right. I should have known better. I can't be part of your world, Ethan, and I won't let Mia be part of an act ever again. I won't take another contract for any reason." She hit send. No response. Not right away. Across town, Ethan sat in his office. The skyline stretched endlessly before him, but all he saw was that message. He reread it 3 times. His heart, which had learned to feel again, to ache again, now felt carved out from the inside. He closed his laptop, cancelled his next meeting. He walked into his penthouse kitchen where 3 plates had been set the night before. One for him, one for Mia with her favorite spoon, one for Lauren. He'd picked up her favorite pastries that morning. They still sat on the counter, untouched. The apartment felt too quiet, too big, too wrong. He sat at the table. For a moment, he reached for Mia's spoon, but his hand stopped midway. He leaned back in his chair and let out a slow, shaky breath. He'd thought he could keep it simple. He'd thought he could control it. But somewhere along the way, this had become real, and now he'd lost the very thing that taught him to feel again. Not because he let her go, but because she left before he found the courage to tell her he never wanted her to. The street looked the same colors, the same smells of cinnamon and melting sugar, but something had changed. Lauren was behind her little pastry stall, wiping the edge of a tray that was already clean. Her movements were slower these days, quieter. Across from her, Mia sat with her bunny, not swinging her feet or humming like she used to. Instead, she clutched the stuffed toy tight and looked up at her mother. "Is Mr. Ethan mad at me?" Mia asked softly. "Why won't you let him come anymore?" Lauren's hand froze mid-wipe. She knelt to Mia's level, brushing a curl from her daughter's forehead. "No, sweetie," she said gently. "He's not mad at you. He's just not around right now. He stopped wanting us." The question cut deeper than Lauren expected. She hugged Mia tight. "No," she whispered. "Sometimes grown-ups get confused, but it's never your fault." Mia nodded, but her smile didn't return. Across town, Ethan stared out the high window of his office. The skyline stretched beyond the glass, but all he could focus on was the little stuffed bunny on the corner of his desk. Mia had left it behind. He'd meant to return it, but he hadn't. Board meetings went on. Contracts were signed. Deals moved forward, but Ethan felt disconnected from it all. He'd driven by Lauren's stall twice already. Both times, he stayed in the car, watching from afar as she served customers with a strained smile, moving like someone holding themselves together by sheer will. He missed them, not the version he'd once tried to hire, not the convenient family image he'd thought he needed, but them. The chaos, the calm, the way Mia clapped when she liked something, and the way Lauren looked when she thought no one was watching. That night, Eleanor called him to her room. Soft jazz played in the background, blending with her warm, seasoned voice. "Sit," she said, gesturing to the chair beside her. Ethan obeyed. She studied him for a long moment. "I've lived a lot of years," she began, "and I've seen a lot of people pretend." He said nothing. "When that young woman walked into my party," she continued, "I knew she wasn't your girlfriend, but I also knew something else." Ethan looked up, surprised. "I saw the way you looked at her," Eleanor said, "and more importantly, the way you looked at that little girl." She leaned forward slightly. "Don't let your pride cost that child the chance to grow up believing she's not worthy of a real family. And don't let Lauren think she's just another temporary contract in your world." His throat tightened. "I know you," Eleanor whispered. "You're afraid of wanting something real. But Ethan, you already want it. You just haven't said it out loud." Silence settled between them. Then she touched his hand, light but firm. "If you're lucky, they're still waiting. But they won't wait forever." Ethan nodded, rising slowly from his seat. He looked at the door, then back at his grandmother. "Thank you," he said quietly. Eleanor smiled. "Go, but don't go with apologies. Go with the truth." As Ethan stepped into the hallway, he still didn't know what words he'd use. But for the first time in weeks, he knew exactly where he had to go and who he had to fight for. It was just past dusk when Ethan finally found her. The alley was quiet, lit by strings of soft yellow bulbs swaying gently in the breeze. Small market stalls dotted the street, and the faint scent of cinnamon hung in the air. At the end, Lauren was under a faded umbrella, wiping down her table. Her cardigan was patched at the elbows, and her movements were slow, as if her body was there but her heart elsewhere. Mia sat nearby on a crate, her stuffed bunny pressed to her chest. She looked up and froze. Then her face lit up. "Mr. Ethan," she cried joyfully. Before Lauren could turn, Mia launched forward, arms outstretched, racing across the pavement until she hugged Ethan's legs tightly. "I told Mommy you'd come back," I told her. Ethan knelt to her level, hugging her like she was the most precious thing in the world. "I missed you too, kiddo." Lauren stepped out from behind her cart. Her eyes widened at first, then softened, but she said nothing. "Lauren," he said quietly. She stayed still, guarded. Her eyes held a dozen emotions: hurt, caution, hope. Ethan reached into his coat and pulled out the bunny Mia had forgotten. "It's been on my desk," he said. "I think it missed you." Mia giggled, hugging it tight. "It missed all of us." Ethan stood and turned to Lauren again. "I know I hurt you," he said, "and I'm sorry. I let fear and pride get in the way. I should have stood by you, told the truth. About everything." Lauren said nothing, but her hands gripped the towel she held tighter. "I never planned this," he continued. "But somewhere between pretending and protecting, I fell in love with you, with your strength, with how fiercely you love your daughter. You walked into my life on a lie, but you stayed in my heart, because everything about you is real." He paused. Then, slowly, he knelt, not for show, not for a headline, just a man kneeling in a quiet alley, asking for a chance. "Lauren, I don't want to rent your time. I don't want to pretend anymore. I want to be the man who comes home to you, who helps pack lunchboxes and chases Mia around the kitchen." He looked at her with unwavering eyes. "I want to be your partner, your family. I want to be Mia's dad, not just in name but in heart. And I want to be your husband." Silence stretched, soft and still. Lauren's lips parted. Her eyes shimmered with tears. Mia stood to the side, bunny in arms, grinning ear to ear. After a long moment, Lauren whispered, "You're lucky I already taught Mia about forgiveness." She stepped closer. "She convinced me not to give up on you," she said, smiling through tears. Ethan looked at Mia, who gave him a proud thumbs up. Lauren took his hand. "Okay then," she said. "But this time, no contracts, no pretending, just us." Ethan stood and wrapped her in a hug that said everything he couldn't. Above them, the string lights swayed. Around them, the market bustled on, but in their little corner, time stood still. Mia spun around them, laughing. "I knew it. I knew it. I knew it." And for the first time in his life, Ethan didn't feel powerful or successful. He felt something better. He felt home. The sun was soft that morning, filtering gently through the windows of the old community school, recently restored and reopened, thanks to a quiet donation from the Blackwood Foundation. Lauren had chosen the spot herself, not a ballroom or grand estate, just the old oak tree in the courtyard where kids laughed every day. It felt right, a symbol of second chances, like the one life had finally given her. The wedding was small. Some neighbors from Lauren's old street stall, a few school friends, no photographers, no press. Mia led the way, in a white dress with tiny sunflowers on the hem, tossing petals like confetti with pride only a 4-year-old could carry. Behind her, Lauren walked slowly. No veil, no sparkle, just soft curls, a simple white dress, and eyes full of love. Ethan waited under the oak, nerves hidden behind a shaky smile. In the front row, Eleanor sat in her wheelchair, a handkerchief in her lap embroidered with the words, "Love shows up." She'd believed in this from the start. When Lauren reached him, Ethan took her hands. The world seemed to go quiet. "Lauren," Ethan said, voice breaking, "once I paid you to pretend a role because I was too scared to want something real. I thought I needed a perfect magazine partner, but what I needed was someone who'd sit with me on the kitchen floor and laugh when I burned the pancakes." A soft wave of laughter rippled through the guests. Lauren's smile trembled, her eyes filled with tears. "I asked you to show up for one day," he continued. "Today, I'm asking you to stay for a lifetime, no contracts, no pretending, just us." He held out a simple gold ring. "Lauren, will you marry me?" Lauren breathed in, smiled through tears, and said softly, "Once you paid me to be part of your world, but today I choose to stay, not for who you are on paper, but for how you see me. You really see me."